9:48 p.m., Los Angeles International Airport, an atmosphere. The air was thick as burnt tar, filled with the smell of sweat, cigarettes, and a pounding heartbeat. Her heels clicked on the marble floor, like a countdown clock echoing through a night when the world seemed to hold its breath. Veronica Ellison, 53, the new FBI director, appeared without warning, no flags, no escort, no flash. Just a carefully tailored ash-gray suit, discreet but powerful, and a gaze that was enough to silence a room. Her black hair was tied back as if every strand had signed a pledge of obedience. Her left hand clutched her leather briefcase, her inseparable object containing documents that the president would have to ask permission to read. She had just landed from Seattle, her head still ached, her heart still heavy, but she did not allow herself to be tired. All she needed was 15 minutes of silence in the back of the black SUV, where there were no orders, no questions. She turned through gate 23. 2 security officers emerged as if from the shadows. Fair-skinned, in their early 30s, their uniforms still fresh. She didn't look at them, didn't slow down. But her eyes, trained in hundreds of campaigns, recognized the mismatch with a single glance, a bump of elbows, a nod of the head as if nothing had happened. Too obvious. "Excuse me, ma'am." The voice behind her was like a bullet piercing the night fog. Veronica turned. Not panicked. Just knew who had made the first wrong move. "What's going on?" Her voice was husky, southern, soft but hard as steel. "We need to check your briefcase." The officer's hand hovered near his weapon. Too close. "A briefcase?" She tilted her head, her lips curling slightly. "You mean the briefcase reserved for federal agents who have just finished their shift and are on their way back to the hotel?" She pulled an identification card from her coat and held it out in front of her like a quick-draw knife. "I'm Veronica Ellison, Director of the FBI." The crowded space fell into a deadly silence. A few people stopped. A woman pushing a luggage cart slowed down, her eyes wide. "What about a fake one?" the second officer said, his voice soft but shaking. One of them turned his phone around and started recording. Veronica didn't blink. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to threaten. She just stood there, a pillar in the small storm. "You're going to question the director of the FBI, over a gray briefcase?" A female voice said behind her, "I'm live." The light from the phone hit the badge. The 2 officers began to sweat. The collars of their uniforms tightened like rope. 6:43 p.m., Grand Central Terminal, New York. Cold rain pounded against the glass dome. The red neon lights of the store signs reflected like streaks of blood. In the chaos of hundreds of feet, Veronica stood still as a rock. Her eyes scanned the crowd, not searching, but identifying. 2 men in black, their earpieces tucked under their collars, unmoving but not hiding their alertness. "Call your commander." The command was low, but as sharp as a scalpel. When one of them reached for the briefcase, she took a single step back, enough to establish a boundary. "No one touches. Unless you have authority." The air receded, almost tangible. An electric current filled the air between the 2 camps. The older man gave a signal. A hand grabbed her wrist. Cold cuffs locked. Metal clanged against stone. She didn't cry out, didn't protest, just clenched her jaw. "Do you know what you're doing?" Her voice was as hard as stone. Illegal detention of a high-ranking federal official on American soil. Landry, the name flashed on his name tag. His face was no longer confident. Just blank. "You're done for," he said. But Veronica didn't answer. She just sat back, her back straight, her eyes never leaving the 2 people who had handcuffed her. "Wait, she's the director of the FBI." A female voice rang out. And in that moment, everything changed. The noise from the crowd died down to a murmur like whine through the shutters. No one spoke, but eyes began to wander. The shutters, began to vibrate. Not steadily, not strongly. Then someone raised a phone, live. Landry bent down. An ID card fell at his feet. When his eyes met the card, his breath caught. His jaw clenched. "Dian," he muttered, almost inaudibly. A tall, cold, older man stepped forward. He snatched the card from Landry, his eyes scanning the photo, the embossed seal, the barcode. The words, "Clearance Level 7, Federal Bureau of Investigation," lit up like a slap in the face of suspicion. He turned to Veronica. No more hard-nosed, no interrogation, no arrest warrant. Just a question, a whisper. "Where did you get this?" Veronica looked up. Her voice was low but clear, sharp as steel. "It was given to me, after 28 years of service to this country." Her eyes locked on Landry's, commanding. A look forged in the furnace. "The people who trained you, they worked for me." Landry paused. For the first time, his certainty was drained. He took a half step back, his eyes wavering, confused, as if searching for an escape. "You just tell me," he tried, but Veronica cut him off. "I told you. 5 minutes ago. And I gave you the proof. But you didn't care. Because you chose to believe what you wanted to believe." She didn't shout, but her voice rang out like a bell. Those nearby heard. Landry glanced around. The main hallway of the headquarters was crowded with people, security, admin staff, interns, a few people live streaming publicly. Several internal security agents approached, clearly displeased to see a doorman just standing there, motionless. Devon opened his mouth to speak. But then a cold voice came through his earpiece. "Code 542. Agents on the way. DHS confirmed scene, priority B." Devon froze. His eyes met Landry's. "What's a 542, a young agent asked quietly. Devon swallowed. "High priority. Those are, the kind of people you don't want to upset." Veronica said nothing. But she leaned forward, as if the slightest contact would cause the entire system to collapse. Instead, she exhaled, a breath of ice cutting through the air. "It's okay." The words were light, but the handcuffs fell from her wrists as if freedom were a given. Landry fumbled with the key, then dropped it, the metal clanging against the floor, a sound as clear as shame. He bent down to pick it up. "It's just formality, ma'am," he mumbled. She rubbed her wrist, her eyes never leaving his. "You need to stop calling me that. Ma'am doesn't erase what you just did." Devon handed over the briefcase. She didn't reach out to take it. No touching classified documents without permission. His hand froze in midair. The whole hallway held its breath. Veronica straightened, adjusting her lapel. Not too fast, not too slow, like a lecturer about to take a podium, and looked straight at the two men before her, her eyes piercing every layer of armor. "I hope your chain of command is ready for this. Anyway, it's too late." No agents arrived, no press, no flags, no announcements. But the humiliation was there, quiet, profound. The red marks of handcuffs were around her wrists. Veronica squeezed, then opened them. No moaning, but she felt it. Devon wiped his forehead. Landry murmured, either a curse or an apology. No one said anything more. But the crowd had changed, no longer curious, but alert. The cameras were no longer furtive, people were openly recording. They were waiting to see what the handcuffed woman would do. Veronica bent down, picked up the briefcase, and brushed the dust off. The door was still open, she closed it gently, as if to seal a warning. Then a voice rang out, breaking the ice in the air. "Excuse me, what's going on here?" A black man in his 60s, a faded denim jacket, and salt and pepper hair, stood there. He didn't raise his voice, but he had something the others didn't, unwavering conviction. "This woman is the director of the FBI." He spoke as if quoting from the oath. I know her. I saw her testify before the Judiciary Committee, last week. He looked at Landry and Devon as if they were reprimanded students. You drag her down like a criminal, but she's worth more than your careers combined. Veronica looked at him. Her eyes were still sharp, but softened. Not with gratitude, but as if she'd just met someone who knew how to stand firm in a storm. I'm fine. Her voice was as calm as a lake after a storm. But as soon as she turned, Veronica pointed at the two officers behind her. Stop. It wasn't a shout, but a cold command, enough to freeze the air for a moment. Landry almost collapsed, as if his bones were breaking under the weight of the truth. Devon silently glanced up at the surveillance camera hanging in the corner of the ceiling, then down at his shiny shoes, which reflected a part of his unfamiliar shame. The agents moved silently, professionally, precisely, like a deadly symphony. One took a statement from the TSA, another verified Veronica's identity with biometrics. There was a silence in the air, not empty, but heavy, like the weight of a sin that had just been exposed. I want all security data extracted. Now, the main agent said, his face expressionless. The hallway camera suddenly became more important than the excuses. An internal affairs officer was waiting in the car. This is crazy, Devon muttered. An older black man stood beside him, his eyes deep as a pit, looking at Devon as if he were a child who didn't understand that the game was never fair, and that black women were never allowed to make mistakes, even when they were innocent. No one asked Veronica's name. No one needed to. She stood straight, tightening the strap of her bag, her eyes like hidden knives. I'm leaving. Now. No farewells. Just nods from the agents, and muted understanding. The cameras were still rolling, but nothing could capture the silence that was as heavy as unspoken forgiveness. The drive from the conference to the armored SUV was a lifetime long. In the car, Agent Sonia Delveo waited. Her face was hard and stern, like an unread indictment. Veronica sat down, her voice calm. I'm not hurt. The report is in, Sonia said. Her voice was low, but clear, as if she were pleading, not for Veronica, but for herself. Her hand still bore the red marks of her seatbelt. Their eyes met, and they understood each other without words. 3 camera angles. Analyzed audio. Veronica's every move in the hearing room was being replayed in slow motion in the command room, where the alarm still flickered like a fever that had not yet broken. Let them see, Veronica said. Her eyes did not blink. Sonia nodded. In that nod was an oath, we will not let this go unburied. Veronica whispered, not me. But they will. Soon. Not in anger, but in a whisper of truth, too long muffled. The third time in 4 months, Sonia said, her eyes on the table, director held up in Langley. Then a verification error in Denver. And now this. Veronica just looked at her. No resentment. Just an icy sadness. I have the records. And that video, Sonia whispered. The SUV slid into the night. Silence fell like a blanket soaked with history that had not yet been washed away. Veronica's phone rang. An unfamiliar number. She answered. Director Ellison. This is Judge Harlan Bixby. I saw the video. The way you kept your cool, not everyone can do it. Some of us did. And thank you. Veronica took a breath, her first real breath in hours. My nephew says you're the first person in government he's ever respected. Her voice caught. It's more important than you think. And she ended the call, looking out, the flowers blooming under the streetlights. Inside her, something had changed. When she got back to the security center, the storm had begun. DHS had sealed off Gate 37. Reporters were screaming behind the barricades. In the interrogation room, Devon was pacing like a trapped animal. Landry was slumped over, his head in his hands. You think I'm done for? Landry asked quietly. The door swung open. A federal agent walked in. No introductions. No emotion. You're both suspended immediately. 2 files were set down like sentences. Weapons and badges will be confiscated. No media. No contact with the director. She paused. Her eyes were sharp. The woman you insulted is not just the director of the FBI, she's someone who has faced more threats than you could ever dream of. And this, it's not going away. Back in the SUV, Veronica sat in silence. The phone buzzed again. It was from her daughter in Florida. You did the right thing, Mom. I'm proud of you. She pursed her lips. She looked out the window. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning. At Columbia University, where she'd once studied, where she'd been kicked out of a class for asking too many questions, she decided, this was where the declaration would begin. Sonia stood by the window, the afternoon sun beating down on her tired but confident face. I'm proud of you, Veronica. Don't let them make you think you're not good enough. They're just not ready. Veronica closed her eyes. The darkness behind them was the past that hadn't been let go. When she opened them again, she nodded. They will be ready. And this time, she would write the story with her own hands. That morning, 9 o'clock sharp. No sirens. No live cameras. No flags raised. Only the pale light from the great glass ceiling of Columbia Hall, as fragile as a glimmer of hope, illuminated Veronica standing alone on a wooden podium. She had no microphone, no prompter. Only a bottle of water, a blank sheet of paper, and a voice more steely than any evidence. In the lower row, among the students, independent journalists, and thoughtful eyes, sat a woman. She wore a faded cotton jacket. Her hair was gray, her hands clenched in her lap. She had been a normal mother, until that morning many years ago, when her 13-year-old son was handcuffed in the middle of the schoolyard. No evidence. No explanation. He was just running too fast and his skin wasn't fair enough. She had sat in the courthouse hallway that day. She had cried. Silently. Swallowing each sob into her heart as if the crying itself were a sin. You saw the last scene, Veronica said, her voice like a thin blade cutting through the silence. I was arrested at Newark Airport. 2 cops, handcuffed, even though I showed them my badge. I called them by name. But it didn't matter. I was a threat before I opened my mouth. No one had forced her to speak today. No background of power. No backing. But she had come. And this time, she was not silent. I'm not here for revenge, she said. I don't need you to fear me. I need you to understand. The air in the hall seemed to thicken. A young student raised her hand, her voice trembling. So what do you want to change? Veronica looked him straight in the eye, piercing through generations of forced resignation. I don't want a little shake-up. I didn't come here to undo a few links. I came here to melt the chain. The next day, no press conference, no flashing lights, there was just an empty room with 3 chairs. Devin and Landry, the 2 cops who had handcuffed her, entered. No more weapons, no more arrogance. Veronica wasn't sitting between them. She sat across from them, alone. She placed 3 photos on the table. 1, her, in her suit on her first day at Quantico. 2, her, after her first arrest, still in uniform. 3, her father, a civil rights lawyer who believed the system could change. Yesterday, Veronica said, you told him he was wrong, not with words, but with actions. Landry bowed his head. Devin swallowed. She stood up, not waiting for a response. If you choose to wear a badge, it's not enough to be called a person. You have to overcome your instincts. You have to be better. A month later, in a juvenile rehabilitation facility, Veronica stood amid weary eyes. There was no stage, no lecture. Just faded jeans, a black leather jacket, and the undeniable presence of someone who had gone through pain, and chosen to turn it into action. A boy looked at her as if to challenge her, as if to ask, "How are you different from them?" Veronica didn't flinch. She sat down next to him, her voice low, loud enough for a wounded soul to hear. "I didn't come to forgive. I came to make sure none of you would ever have to sit in the courthouse hallway crying like my mother did." His hair was a mess, as if he had never slept, and the dark tattoos scattered around his neck were the marks of rebellion. He smiled, a smile that was both ironic and hopeful. "You came here to tell us that we can become FBI agents?" Veronica looked straight at him. Her eyes weren't cold, or spiteful, they were simply calm. A calm that took your breath away. "No," she said, her voice not high, not harsh, but heavy as a stone dropped into a well. "I came here to remind you, that you still have the right to redefine yourself." There was no speech. No slogan. Just her voice, like an underground stream through stone, steadfast and unquenchable. And they saw her. Not the image they had conjured up in their minds, the cold, sharp leader, the emotionless symbol of the system, but her, a human being standing there, breathing, stumbling, getting up. And that alone, was enough to change the mood in the room. Silence fell like a thick blanket over all the gossip. A girl with braided hair, her voice trembling slightly, asked, "If you were misunderstood like us, why didn't you give up?" Veronica turned to her. The answer came like a knife, sharp but warm, because the world always wants to shrink you, to put you in a box they can handle. But you are not a box. You are a flame. A hand rose, asking to take a picture with her. Veronica paused for a second, a little surprised, then nodded. As they stood side by side, one boy whispered, almost afraid of his own emotions, "My mother was wrongly arrested. You make me think that maybe there's still a place for someone like her." Veronica put her hand on his shoulder. Her voice softened, "I'm grateful, that my mother is still here. Still herself. After everyone else had turned their backs, she stayed. After everyone had left, she lingered in the empty room. Her hand lightly touched the old leather briefcase, the one that had fallen to the airport floor on her first day of duty. The briefcase was still there, but she was no longer the same person. She returned late that night. The lights were off in the office, only her desk lamp was still on. She hung her coat over the chair, pushed her reading glasses down her nose, and her eyes silently scanned the black and white photo frame, Veronica, 23, standing on the steps of Quantico. Her mother had called that day, her voice shaking, crying, "You did it, you really did it." She hadn't cried that day. She'd been too busy proving it wasn't luck. But now, in silence, she remembered the feeling of those old hallways, where the name Ellison rang out like a challenge. The cheap shoes. The skeptical looks. And a trust that no one had given her, that she had to earn. Today, she wasn't fighting just for herself. The lessons she'd learned were now for her to give, to anyone brave enough to listen. Some nights, amid the wind whistling through the 18th floor windows, she'd wonder, was all this worth it? When she got to her high-rise apartment, she'd take off her high heels like a mask. She didn't go into the living room. She didn't turn on the lights. She sat on the cold wooden floor, her back against the door. Sometimes, she needed to touch the ground, to remember that she was still real. No one saw the small cracks in her voice during a tense meeting. No one knew how she had to clench her fists when she was questioned not for her mistakes, but because she had surpassed them long ago. The phone rang. Task force meeting at 6:45 a.m. She frowned, then opened the bottom drawer. The first files. Missing cases in Nevada. A human trafficking ring busted in El Paso, a place no one believed she could lead. Until she did. At the bottom, as flat as an oath, was the letter her father had written when she was appointed deputy director: "They will check you. They will ask how you got here. Let them wonder why they thought you couldn't. She read it again. No tears. Just more determination. Not for glory. Not for permission to be herself. But in the empty room, amid the fluorescent lights and the sighs of the world outside, she allowed herself to remember. Not to lament, but to remember, that her heart was still there, even though the world had taken it away from so many women like her. At 11:18 p.m., she stood. Turned off the lights. Put on her coat. Locked the door. The long hallway was empty. Her shoes echoed on the marble floor. The elevator doors closed behind her. She exhaled, not a sigh, but the letting go of someone who knew she had done right. No laughter. No tears. Just standing tall, shoulders square, head held high. The FBI director. This time, no one could take that away from her. Not because of what they saw in the papers. Not because of the hearings. But because of what she did next. And that was what history would remember.